finally, we also got the roadmap in English, because for those of you who didn't know, last week Garena leaked this roadmap in Chinese, but I didn't want to cover it yet, because I know how much Riot likes to use puns to tease what's coming, and I didn't want to rely on imperfect translations. Anyway, finally it's here, and as always, this means that it is time to predict who's coming into League of Legends. Spoiler alert, we actually have a pretty good guess. So, let's get on it. The roadmap starts with mentioning Gwen. It is teasing the fact that Gwen's story will continue throughout 2021. This is nice to hear, because even though we know that Viego's story will move forward, I was worried the other champions would just stay behind. So I'm glad to hear that Gwen will be a bigger part of the story that is still to come. Anyway, after that we got the first interesting thing. After mentioning that this roadmap will show us some of the new concepts for the new Udyr, it also showed us this image. Now, of course, what we can see here is the Freljord being invaded by the Black Mist. And while most people assume that this is somehow related to Udyr, I don't think that's the case. Yes, we can see some shamanistic bones at the bottom, but let's be honest, these are literally all over the Freljord. And yes, at the back we can see some bear statues and even paws in the rocks, which are likely referencing the Volibear. But I still think that all of that is just visual noise for the Freljord. This is simply what you can see in that region. So, I think the main point of this image is not to tease that Udyr is going to be somehow related to what is happening with the Black Mist. Because remember, the players voted for Udyr to get the VGU. So if we voted for someone like Shyvana, Udyr wouldn't even be here. That's why I don't think that Udyr will be part of Viego's storyline. He simply wasn't planned that way. So instead, I think this image is going to tease the story that will finally give Braum a reason to be part of the Ruined King game. Because honestly, out of all the champions, Braum is still the only champion with no actual reason to be in Bilgewater. So what I think this image is teasing is that there will be something in the Freljord that will have a part of Isolde's soul in it, the Black Mist will take it, but whatever that thing is will also be related to Braum. And so, after it is taken away, Braum will track down the Black Mist in order to get it back. I think something like this will happen, and that will be the reason for Braum to be in the game. If that's not the case, we still have no idea why Braum would be there. After this, we jump straight into Mundo. The post mentions that Mundo is getting a little bit smarter, because truth be told, before it was kinda ridiculous. But that ridiculousness was part of his character, and you can definitely feel the change in the new voice lines.
No worry, me doctor! Dear medical journal, Mundo attempt brain transplant on Mundo today. Me think it go good.
In my opinion, the voice is good, but it is lacking the same fluctuation which the original voice had. That's why he doesn't feel as goofy anymore, which is a bit sad. In the past, Mundo was always the goofiest character we got, so even with the new voices, I hope that doesn't change. Also, this picture is part of Mundo's splash art. These feet belong to a patient which Mundo is operating on, with Mundo being in the asylum suit to the left. And he has his trusted assistant on the right. We don't really know who this is, but I have to say something. I really hope this is not a Yordle. I hope it's just a random raccoon which Mundo named something like Mr. Fiddles. And this raccoon better have more lore than Corky. Speaking of which, I still hope they don't actually change Mundo's story. I hope they just give him more context, and I hope the new story simply explains the visual change. It would be cool if Mundo's story simply continued. He was captured by an asylum, he escaped from there, and that's why he now has the new suit. I would really appreciate something like this, instead of rewriting his entire story. Anyway, then the post jumps into the skins. First of all, there is Rageborn Mundo. This skin was always my personal favorite Mundo skin. And here in the background you can see Barbarian Scion, and you can see that Mundo is carrying some in-game items. This includes the refilling potion, Kindle Gem, and pickaxe. And after this, the post also shows us the legendary skin, Corporate Mundo. Now, first of all, they made a short teaser for this skin. And in this teaser, you can see that Mundo is running away in a car. Now, this asset will most likely be used for one of two things. if not both. This will either be part of his recall animation, where he jumps into a car and drives into the sunset, or, and this would be even cooler, maybe the car is part of his home guard animation. So just like the High Noon skins can ride horses, maybe Mundo will drive a car. Anyway, in my opinion, the voice lines of this skin are better than the original. And that's because they are simply more comedic. They are goofier than the original. And that's simply why they are better.
Mundo smashed sales record. Invisible hand of free market, great guy. Firm grip and not real.
Regardless, after this we are getting into the new champions. First, there is the Light Sentinel. And here I have to call something out. I was right. The new Light Sentinel is in Shurima. So now, even though everyone remembers every single time I am wrong, remember, with this one, I was right. So now I have the right to be wrong again. Anyway, even though this was never mentioned in the post, we know this Light Sentinel is in Shurima because of the images shown later on. But before we get there, first let's have a look at the weapon. They are going to be using a grappling hook. However, because it is a jade weapon, it can really come from all sorts of regions. It could theoretically be mined in Shurima. On top of archaeology, simply mining for gems is actually common here. But besides that, jade can also be found in Ionia. And because the Light Sentinels are known for traveling around, I wouldn't be surprised if this champion had some links to Ionia as well. But unfortunately, we don't really get more info on this. Though, if you look at the background, you can see that either the Black Mist is chasing this person, or this person is tracking down the Black Mist. After all, that's really what the Light Sentinels do. Then the post mentions that this champion will be a mid lane marksman. I like it when Riot tries to change up the meta. Or rather, instead of meta changes, they are trying to see if they can push other champions into bot lane. So instead of it always being an AD carry and support, if you have marksman in mid lane, maybe you can have a support and a mage in bot lane. Or who knows, Yasuo with a support as an AD carry will finally be more popular. Regardless, this champion will try to change the meta. And as always, it will work. For like a week. And then the champion will be used in bot lane again. I mean, Senna was supposed to be a marksman support, so of course, people simply just used her as a marksman. Anyway, then we get the last image about the champion. And this one shows us a place which we know. First of all, again, this is absolutely in Shurima, which is something I called out with the very first teaser. But here, I am pretty sure this is Nashrame, one of the northern cities of Shurima. Because if you have a look at this image, you can see the 3 towers with the green caps, and the miniature sun disk in the background. And if you go to the map of Runeterra, and there you have a look at Ashrame, you can find the exact same image. It also has the 3 towers with the green caps, and the miniature sun disk in the background. Which means that the Black Mist arrived in Ashrame, which also means that Viego will be looking for something in Shurima. And what's awesome about this is that in the latest story about Gwen, we learned that Gwen moved onto the Shuriman continent. Gwen is somewhere around this place. And so it really seems like the story of the Ruined King will continue in Shurima. Last thing we can call out is that this entire part of the post is titled From Street Rat to Sentinel, which makes it feel like the champion started in the streets, but he was recruited by the Order of the Light Sentinels. But that's all I can really get from this. And when it comes to his release, Riot noted that the Yordle that was supposed to come before the Light Sentinel was delayed. So now the Light Sentinel will come before the Yordle. And speaking of the Yordle, let's have a look at them now. First of all, Riot confirmed that this Yordle was originally supposed to be an artillery mage, just like someone like Xerath. But now they were shifted more to a traditional mage, so something like Brand or Annie. However, then the post mentioned something interesting. It mentions that they needed to create new tech to visually sell her source of power. First of all, this confirms that the Yordle is a she, but also, based on the image, the source of power seems to be the Yordle's shadow. And with this context, all of this absolutely makes sense. When you have a look at how shadows are rendered with the current engine, the game basically takes a flat image of the champion and it slaps it on the ground. That is, if you have highly detailed shadows. In-game, you can technically also turn the shadows off, or the shadow can be just a dark spot. So what the current engine can't do is remove a single shadow from a champion while keeping all the other shadows still intact. So what I think might be happening here is that Riot is changing the engine ever so slightly so that they can play with the shadow of the Yordle. Because that shadow will definitely be the core of the Yordle's abilities. If you really think about it, it makes sense why at the beginning the Yordle was supposed to be an artillery mage. If the Yordle was able to manipulate the shadows of their enemies, you know, anime style, that would definitely fit a long-range mage. But something changed and they needed to change their abilities. Regardless, if you have a look at the shadow, I believe the reason why the eyes of the shadow are actually not casting shadows, you know, there is no way to make holes inside of a shadow, is because this is not a shadow. I think the shadow itself is a living entity. That's why it looks so unnatural. And just like something like the Maiden of the Mist is attached to Yorick, I think this shadow will be attached to the Yordle. In my opinion, that's what's happening here. Also, if you have a look at the background, it really feels like they are in the vaults of Helya. These marks on the floor could either be found in the Shreeman tombs, but here it is more likely the Blessed Isles. Because in the original teaser for the Yordle, there was a portal leading from Bandle City into the vaults of Helya. So that's where the story of the Yordle will be happening. Lastly, some people wondered if this could be Nora. And I'm sad to say that no, I really don't think this can be Nora, for one obvious reason. If the shadow is supposed to be the main source of power of this Yordle, I don't think that can be Nora, because Nora's source of power was Book, which Yuumi now has. So it wouldn't make sense for Nora to have two sources of power. A mysterious shadow that was never ever mentioned by Yuumi, and Book. So that's why this Yordle will probably be a new character. Now after this we get some sketches for the new Udyr. And here Riot is really just looking for feedback. Just like what they have done with Volibear, where people told them that the Nightmare is really cool but it doesn't feel like the original Volibear. Here they also want feedback on the new Udyr. And I have to say, if Riot went with the Warrior Shaman, which is really the safest bet, I think people would be happy. It's a cool, safe design. I think the Mountain Brawler is a better version of it, because the bones on the shoulders really give him a unique silhouette. Also, I really like the knee skulls, but better than the knee skulls is the crotch skull. Okay, jokes aside, I don't really like the Wild Druid, but there are jokes to be made with bony crotch. Regardless, my favorite one is the Untamed. It really feels like the original Udyr, and I love the fact that the boar actually has 4 eyes. Though this one would be quite impractical. Because with the boar hide on his back, making skins for the new Udyr would also be really painful. They just need to avoid giving him new models for every single stance. That's just gonna make it so that Udyr will have less skins. And the changing hide on his back will be an expensive thing to deal with. So taking all of this into account, I think the Mountain Brawler is the best one. It's the right mix of a warrior, a shaman, and a druid. And it has a unique silhouette, which is what Riot will prioritize the most. And lastly, this takes us to the new champion that will happen after Viego's saga. So after the 3 champions, which is Gwen, the Sentinel and the Yordle, which are related to Viego, are released, then the new storyline will start, and this champion will be the first champion in the new storyline. Or, you know, maybe it's not a full-on storyline, but this will be the new champion after we are done with Viego. Anyway, even though this teaser doesn't really show us anything, I have a really good guess as to who this champion is. You see, the post mentions that this is a marksman with an electrifying glimpse into the most tenacious regions. Notice that it is a plural, Runeterra's regions. But most importantly, the post mentions, what else is there to do but take the next leg of the year head on? Now, if this is Faye, I am going to lose it, because this would mean that I predicted this champion 2 years before their release. This would probably be the most amazing prediction I ever pulled off. Now, of course, in the past, people always forget whenever I get things right. For example, I did predict Viego based on this image, but people forgot that. So with this one, if this turns out to be Faye, you better remember this, because this will be amazing. You see, I called this out twice in 2 separate videos. First in the video where we actually covered the story of Akali and Faye, and also in a video where I talked about side characters that could become champions. And in both of those videos I talked about what this post might be teasing. You see, Faye is Akali's childhood friend. Now back when they were kids, Akali's mother was the Fist of Shadow, which was one of the 3 leaders of the Kinko. Faye, being the oldest and most experienced of the kids, was destined to become the next Fist of Shadow. And so Akali's mother paid more attention to Faye than Akali, which was her own daughter. Now in their story, the Navori Brotherhood invaded the area around the Kinko Monastery, and there they woke up an evil spirit guardian. That spirit guardian attacked the kids. And as all the kids were being strangled by the roots of the spirit, the youngest kid of them all, Akali, charged in and started saving all the kids. Of course, Faye, taking the responsibility into her own hands, tried to help Akali, and so she supported her from a distance with her bow. By the way, that's why their story is called The Bow and the Kunai. However, at the end, while they saved all the kids, Faye lost her leg because Akali rushed in so brashly. So it was because of Akali that Faye lost her leg. Remember this, I believe this will be important later on. Now at the very end of the story, after Faye woke up from her coma, and she found out that she didn't have a leg. First of all, she got really angry at Akali, but also Akali's mother made her a promise. Here is a quote from the story. "There must be a way to make you walk again. If we must search every corner of Ionia and beyond to find it, that's what we will do. Under Shen's leadership, Kennen and I, and the rest of the Kinko, will find a way." So as you can see, Akali's mother promised her that they will make Faye walk again. And here's the thing, in the video where we covered that story, I called out that there is only really one option how to make her walk again. She could get a new leg in Zoan. And that's what this post is referring to. It mentioned most tenacious regions, which could be Ionia, that is constantly pushing back invaders, and Zoan, which is constantly fighting back the Piltover suppression. So if you sum it all up, I really do believe that the next champion after Viego's storyline is going to be Faye. And if this turns out to be right, this will be perhaps my best prediction yet. Because unlike someone like Cytherea, Faye didn't get a lot of story, but the fact that she was a main character in a side story, and that she herself got a really cool twist, you know, with Akali essentially losing her leg, I thought that was enough for her to become a champion. But I also thought that her getting a new leg in Zoan was a little bit of a stretch. Well, perhaps it wasn't so. And we might actually get a ninja from Ionia with Zoanite augments. Also, I really hope she gets connected with Victor. Anyway, that is it for this roadmap. While at first it didn't seem like we got much out of it, the details and puns are actually revealing some cool things. So we know that the Light Sentinel is Shreeman, we know that the Yordle will be dealing with shadows, and the new champion after Viego's storyline might be Faye. But that's it for this roadmap. I also want to point out that yes, Riot also revealed a new cinematic for the new cards for Legends of Runeterra, which include Zilean, Malphite and Irelia, but I'm still not sure if I want to make a video about it. If you guys want me to cover it, especially the fact that, you know, Malphite is not in Ishtal, which is where he should be, while there is not much to talk about, there are still some cool details which I can point out. So if you guys want to see me cover that, let me know below. But take the next leg of the year? No way! I just realized that! No way! If I was right! I'm gonna lose my shit. If this is Faye, and I called Faye as a champion with a Zoanite leg 2 years before this, there is no way.